Can one flash change the fate of humankind? That question has followed me like a shadow. I remember the desert first, vast, silent, and ancient. Long before our machines arrived, the wind carved its own stories across the sand. But in 1945, another story was forming there, one so bright it threatened to blind the world. In those early mornings when the horizon glowed faintly and the cold bit through my coat, I used to wonder what we were truly making: a weapon, a warning, or the beginning of something none of us could control. Back then, I didn't know, but I felt it, a tremor beneath the silence, like history holding its breath. When I first arrived in Los Alamos, they handed me a badge, a room key, and a reminder. You saw nothing. You say nothing. The town wasn't on any map. Even the mail we sent home carried false addresses. But inside those fences lived the brightest minds on Earth: physicists, chemists, mathematicians, men and women who once taught in grand halls, now huddled over chalkboards in cramped desert rooms. Every corridor smelled of metal, paper, and sleepless nights. We worked under dim lights, equations layered over equations like ghosts fighting for space. Oppenheimer walked past us with his quiet intensity, eyes fixed on some distant point only he could see. And though no one dared say it aloud, we all felt the weight pressing down on us. The war was far from over. Every day brought new reports: villages burning, soldiers falling, oceans filled with steel and fire. We were told our work could end it all, but the question that haunted me was, at what cost? As spring turned to summer, the reports grew darker. Japan showed no sign of surrender. Entire islands became battlegrounds where neither side backed down. Men who survived those places said it felt like fighting inside a storm made of metal, smoke, and desperation. In strategy rooms, maps lit up with red arrows pushing forward, each arrow representing thousands of lives. Predictions were grim. If the United States invaded the Japanese mainland, millions could die. Soldiers, civilians, children, all swept into the fire. I sat in those rooms sometimes, not as a decision maker, but as an observer, one more set of eyes that had seen too much. And for the first time, I heard the thought spoken openly. If this weapon works, maybe we won't need an invasion. A coldness spread through me at those words, not because they were cruel, but because they carried the terrible logic of war, a logic that turns impossible choices into necessities. July 16th, 1945. A date carved into the marrow of my bones. The night before the test, the desert was unsettlingly calm. Lightning flickered silently behind distant clouds, as if the sky itself sensed what we were about to do. We gathered before dawn, each man standing a little apart, alone with their thoughts. The tower rose in the distance, a dark silhouette against the pale horizon. On it rested the device we had built, a sphere of metal and mathematics, holding the power of creation and destruction. The countdown began. 10. The air thickened. 5. My heartbeat synced with the ticking relay switches. 1. And then
The world became light. A light so fierce it erased shadows, erased thought, erased everything except itself. The ground shuddered. A sound followed, deep, rolling, ancient, as if the earth were groaning from its core. When the glow finally dimmed, a great column of fire rose into the sky, billowing upward like a monstrous flower blooming in reverse. No one spoke. Some men gripped their helmets, others simply stared. For me, a single realization rang in my mind. We had done it, and nothing would ever be the same.
After the test, everything moved quickly. The device, improved, refined, weaponized, was loaded aboard ships. Maps of the Pacific shifted once again. Circles were drawn around cities whose names I had never spoken with fear before: Hiroshima, Nagasaki. I watched generals debate behind closed doors, their silhouettes sharp against frosted glass. I heard words that sounded heavy even when whispered: surrender, casualties, endgame. But the decision was made far above my rank, made by men who believed, perhaps truly, that the quickest ending was also the most terrible. And so, on a quiet morning in August, as sunlight touched the curved wings of a bomber, the direction of history tilted. Hours later, the news came through the wires. A city had vanished into light. Another would follow. I sat alone at my lab bench, hands trembling, trying to understand how something built with wires, steel, and the brilliance of human minds could unmake so many lives in an instant. I told myself it was to end the war, to save lives, to stop the bleeding of the world. But the truth whispered back was more complicated and far heavier.
The war ended. Celebrations filled the streets. Families embraced. The world exhaled. But for those of us at Los Alamos, relief came shadowed with something else. We had witnessed the dawn of a new age, one where nations held the power not just to fight, but to erase themselves. Oppenheimer once quoted ancient scripture: "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I never asked him if he meant it as regret or warning. Perhaps it was both. As years passed, treaties formed, tensions rose, and the world learned to live under a sky that could, at any moment, burn white again. But I still return, in memory, to that desert morning, to the blinding flash that tore the horizon open, and the question that has never left me: did we end the war, or begin something far more dangerous? If there is a lesson in all of this, it is one carved in fire. Human brilliance can build wonders, but without wisdom, those wonders can unmake the world. And so I pray that our story, born from sand and flame, remains a reminder, not of power, but of responsibility.